In the last 10 years, a surprising military powerhouse has emerged, not in the often watched waters of the Indo-Pacific, but in the strategic crossroads of the Middle East and Africa. This nation has pivoted from a defensive stance to ambitious offensive capabilities, growing increasingly authoritarian domestically while shaking up regional politics. Nope, we're not talking about China. This is Turkey, a long-standing ally of the US through NATO. Yet, Ankara's bold military maneuvers have occasionally clashed with the West's vision of a stable, rule-based international order. In this video, we dive into Turkey's journey from the post-Ottoman shadows into a controversial player on today's geopolitical stage, exploring its neo-Ottoman ambitions and the frictions these create within NATO. Can Turkey carve out a new sphere of influence under the watchful eyes of its historical allies? Let's unpack the story. Turkey has long been a large military spender. Even with the end of the Cold War, Turkey continued to spend well over 2% of its GDP on its armed forces, one of the few NATO countries to do so. Defense spending reached a new low of about 1.8% in 2015, although there was also an outlier of 1.2% in 2022. In 2023, Turkey announced it would increase its military spending by 150% in 2024. After the United States, it has NATO's largest military force, with over 1 million personnel between its active duty, reserve, and paramilitary units. Turkey's military is ranked 8th in the 2024 Global Firepower Index, the third highest in NATO after the United States and United Kingdom. Turkey's geopolitical location has necessitated that it maintain a stronger defense than many other of its NATO allies. To the south lies the conflict-prone Middle Eastern region, to the north lies Russia, a country Turkey has had battles with for centuries. More recently, Armenia and Azerbaijan have erupted into conflict too. Turkey does not have the benefit of being buffered like many NATO countries do in Europe. However, in recent years, the reach of the Turkish military has expanded, and it's created a domestic defense industry whose exports are expanding far further. Following the collapse of the Ottoman Empire in the chaotic aftermath of World War I, the new Republic of Turkey began a period of strategic retreat. Under its first president, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, Turkey attempted to discard its Muslim imperial past and become a secular, industrial, and homogeneous Turkish nation-state based on the Western model of civilization. In a sign of its inward-looking policy during this time, Turkey stayed neutral in World War II until early 1945, although it was a founding member of the United Nations and participated in the Korean War under the UN's banner. Its soldiers performed there with great distinction. It was one of the early members of NATO, joining the alliance in 1952. All of these moves suggested Turkey's continued policy of acting in alignment with the West, and its commitment to the post-World War II international order, constructed largely by the West. In the late 20th century, though, Turkey began to display signs that it was slowly shaking off its strategic retreat and would act more unilaterally. In July 1974, Turkey intervened on Cyprus following a coup by Greek nationalists, who wanted to unify the island with Greece itself, since Cypriot Greeks constitute the majority of the island's inhabitants. On the pretext of protecting the ethnic minority Turkish population, the Turkish military occupied the island and still does, with a force of about 40,000 troops. It has since recognized Northern Cyprus as its own independent nation, the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. No other country recognizes it, but military reality has defeated recognized international law. The standoff continues to this day, and experts tend to acknowledge that a two-state model is the only reasonably realistic way of ending the dispute peacefully. Also important to Turkey's change in strategic posture was the rise of Recep Tayyip Erdogan to power and what he has meant for the country's military. Erdogan has dominated the country's politics for the past 2 decades, first serving as prime minister between 2003 and 2014, and then as the country's first directly elected president. Erdogan has made the professionalization of Turkey's military a priority of his. Under him, the Turkish armed forces have moved away from the old system of one which required men between the ages of 21 to 41 who have not graduated from a university to serve in uniform for at least a year. Instead, Turkey has increasingly modeled itself on a contract-based system in a bid to professionalize the armed forces. This system struggled to get off the ground at first. By 2016, Turkey had difficulties finding recruits for the 80,000 contract positions available for professional soldiers at the time. However, the situation has gotten much better since then. Just 6 years later, more than half of the personnel in the Turkish armed forces were professional troops, exceeding the number of conscripts in Ankara's military for the first time. The professionalization of the Turkish military is an important component of its expanding reach. Conscripted soldiers on short-term stints of service cannot be expected to be deployed far from home, especially for lengthy periods. However, thanks to the increasing ratio of professional troops in the Turkish armed forces, this problem is abating, and Turkey is building up its presence in sending troops on deployments outside of its internationally recognized borders. Erdogan's control over his increasingly professional military was strengthened following a failed coup in the summer of 2016. The more immediate impetus for the expansion in Turkish military power in the region was the Arab Spring in 2011. This wave of unrest and revolution quickly spread from Tunisia to the Turkish border, destabilizing Syria and plunging it into civil war. The war in Syria caused great alarm in Turkey, not only because of its shared border and the flood of refugees that arrived there, but because of perennial fears of Kurdish separatism within its own territory. 15 million Kurds are concentrated in southwestern Turkey. In 1978, the Kurdistan Workers' Party (PKK) was formed, originally with the goal of spreading communism, but later evolving into a Kurdish nationalist organization with armed and political wings. Since 1984, Turkey has fought a conflict with the PKK, which it and the United States considers to be a terrorist organization. Between then and 1999, this conflict was serious, with 30,000 deaths. Low-level operations have continued. Attempts to end the conflict have been made, but none have succeeded, and the PKK remains popular in southeastern Turkey. When the war in Syria began in 2011, Turkey called for the removal of Bashar al-Assad from power. It backed the non-Kurdish Syrian opposition forces, but above all, it wanted to ensure that there would be no autonomous Kurdish area established in Syrian territory, or at least to limit the influence of whatever Kurdish zone did come out of the conflict. Ankara feared that if a strong autonomous zone for the Kurds appeared, it would fuel Kurdish separatism within Turkey's borders. To ensure this would not happen, Turkey has had to walk a tightrope of competing interests. In 2016, it began to intervene militarily in Syria as part of the anti-ISIS coalition, but it also hit Kurdish forces with unilateral airstrikes. This worsened its relations with the United States, which strongly backs Kurdish forces in northern Syria. Despite ordinarily being on opposing sides of the conflict, Turkey and Russia came to an understanding that it could attack the Kurds with Russian support. Turkey also received support for the creation of a safe zone in the Idlib Governorate, which borders Turkey. Turkish troops unilaterally deployed to several observation posts there in 2017. Some of these observation posts were encircled in several offensives by the Syrian government with the support of Russia, Iran, and its proxies. Turkey abandoned some of the posts, but its military remains present in northern Syria. Meanwhile, in October 2019, Turkey launched a controversial offensive into northeastern Syria following American withdrawal from the area. Under a deal negotiated between Russia and Turkey, Kurdish fighters were eventually forced to withdraw 18 miles back from the border. The new buffer would be partially controlled by Russian and Syrian government forces, but Turkey would retain the territory it took in the offensive from October. This area and part of western Syria on the border remains under Turkish control. Human rights abuses in the Turkish-controlled zones have reportedly been common, with accusations of ethnic cleansing among the Kurdish people there. Turkey has also intervened in northern Iraq, where about 8.4 million Kurdish people reside. As early as the 1990s, Turkey pursued PKK militants across the border, but its strategy changed in the mid-2010s. The rise of ISIS gave Turkey a convenient opportunity to expand its military presence in Iraq. This expansion gave rise to the Zilkan military base near the town of Bashika, on the high ground near Mosul in the Nineveh Governorate in 2014. This base has come under attack by rockets several times in recent years. Turkey has expanded its presence in Iraq with more outposts in much the same way it's done in Syria. Over 100 Turkish outposts are spread throughout northern Iraq, and indeed, Turkey now controls most of the Iraqi northern border. Turkey uses these bases to monitor Kurdish activities and launch longer-range special missions and aircraft and drone strikes. Iraq objected strongly to this military presence, but recently the two countries announced a wide-ranging agreement. Under its terms, Iraq would help clear the area of PKK militants and cooperate on the Iraq Development Road, which would connect Turkey to the Persian Gulf via road and rail, creating a crossroads of trade between the region, India, and Europe. In turn, this area would sideline the traditional longer route through Saudi Arabia and the Gulf of Aden. Perhaps to buttress this agreement, Turkey has announced plans to launch a greater offensive into Iraq this summer. To further protect its burgeoning influence in the Persian Gulf, Turkey has the Tariq bin Ziyad military base in Qatar, which it established in 2015. In 2019, the base was expanded to include naval and air components. Today, 5,000 people are stationed there. The base is obviously a threat to Saudi Arabia and makes Turkey less reliant on Saudi energy, since it can source some of it from the now well-protected route from Qatar. If the Iraqi Development Road comes to fruition, Turkey will be even less reliant and will be able to better support the base through a direct land connection with its homeland. Qatar in turn signed a security agreement with Turkey in 2022 to permit its troops to train with Turkish personnel on Turkish territory. Since Qatar was blockaded by Saudi Arabia and several other Arab League states between 2017 and 21, the cooperation with Turkey is a critical item of leverage for the Qataris and increases Ankara's influence there even more. While Turkey has immediate security concerns in Iraq, the Persian Gulf, and Syria, it's used its new military muscle to expand its presence far further afield. In 2017, Turkey established its largest foreign military base near Mogadishu in Somalia. The base followed on the heels of humanitarian intervention that began in 2011, which saw the recreation of services that have been devastated by Somalia's long civil war, such as educational and healthcare institutions. Turkey has trained thousands of Somali soldiers at the base, and in return for its humanitarian and security efforts, Ankara has been granted development rights, such as to the offshore and onshore oil resources in Somalia. These resources must be secured, however, and Turkey has taken up anti-piracy operations in the piracy-plagued region accordingly. Conveniently, this gives Turkey leverage over the busy shipping lanes that go through the Gulf of Aden, either coming toward or moving away from the Suez Canal. In February 2024, Turkey and Somalia expanded their ties even further, including an agreement for the former to help develop a navy for the latter. Turkey will receive 30% of the revenue generated from Somalia's exclusive economic zone in exchange. In January 2020, the Turkish parliament approved a military intervention in Libya, another country torn by civil war originating with the Arab Spring. This intervention followed on the heels of a November agreement with the Government of National Accord in Tripoli, which the United Nations recognized as the official government of the post-Gaddafi Libya. In a convenient innovation, Ankara and Tripoli agreed to create an exclusive economic zone about 18 miles wide, stretching the entire Mediterranean between northeast Libya and southwestern Turkey. These waters have valuable oil and natural gas reserves. The rights of Greece, whose waters this area would at the very least skirt, were ignored. However, Libya's civil war has not ended, and the government in Tripoli needed defending from the Libyan National Army, a faction which has the backing of Russia, Egypt, and the wealthy United Arab Emirates. If the LNA were to win, the agreement Ankara and Tripoli struck would be voided. Therefore, Turkish elements successfully defended the capital of Tripoli from the LNA and forced it to abandon northwestern Libya. Recently, the deployment of Turkish military to Libya has been extended until at least 2026. Don't be surprised if it lasts indefinitely. One of the ways Turkey dispatched the LNA forces was through the use of its drones, and this proved a preview for things to come later in the year, when conflict erupted between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Turkey's supply of these drones to the Azerbaijanis, who are also ethnically Turkish people, proved the decisive factor in the war. Azerbaijan's victory increased Turkish influence in the area, and in 2022, Ankara and Baku signed a defense cooperation agreement. Turkish military personnel have been in Azerbaijan ever since, training and advising their Azerbaijani counterparts and gaining access to an airbase there. The infrastructure in Azerbaijan allows Turkey to further project power into the Caucasus and the Caspian Sea. This is strategic real estate for Turkey's Middle Corridor, which is in some ways its own version of China's Belt and Road Initiative. It aims to connect China to Europe through its territory. In addition to the burgeoning presence of its soldiers, sailors, and airmen, Turkey has emerged as one of the world's leading arms dealers over the last decade. As of 2023, Turkey was ranked 11th in the list of top arms exporting countries, with 1.6% of the global market share. This is obviously small, but Turkey's growth in the market has been explosive, increasing by 170% between 2014 and 18, according to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. Over the past decade, Turkish arms exports have had a faster growth rate than any other country. Saudi Arabia, which otherwise has tensions with Turkey, is nevertheless one of its biggest arms customers, showing how good Turkey has become in walking complicated geopolitical tightropes. Turkey's Bayraktar TB2 drone in particular has proven a popular export item, and Ankara is attempting to create more domestic military products. These include a domestic air defense system to replace the Russian S-400, which it found less than satisfactory. It also includes a new fighter jet, the TAI TF Khan. Turkey claims the Khan is a fifth-generation fighter. Although the aircraft missed the desired 2023 date for its maiden flight, Ankara still intends for it to replace the F-16s in its fleet between 2030 and 35, and it could prove a popular item for international export. Arms sales fuel Turkey's ability to further develop domestic weapons, enriching its coffers, which in turn can be spent on strengthening its own military. Turkey is much more powerful than it was at the turn of the century, but its rise as a regional military power has brought it into tension with its NATO allies. This tension escalated to a full-scale naval standoff with Greece in 2020 over hydrocarbon reserves near Greek islands off the coast of Turkey that each of the two countries claimed as their own. Turkey has also played both sides of the war between Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine has famously used Turkish drones like the Bayraktar TB2, and Turkey has closed the Dardanelles and Bosporus to Russian naval reinforcements. However, Turkey has also not imposed sanctions on Russia for its invasion, like the rest of its NATO allies have. As noted, Turkey has also purchased Russian equipment like the S-400 air defense system, in a deal which saw Washington exclude it from the F-35 program. Turkish purchases of Russian energy in particular have proven critical in making up for some of the lost trade with the European Union. There may also be greater ambitions for Turkey's recent deployments. Some observers have wondered whether Erdogan has ambitions to create a neo-Ottoman sphere of influence. In many ways, Erdogan is more similar to Putin and Xi Jinping than he is to his NATO allies. Under him, Turkey has become more authoritarian and arguably less Western. One of the best-known cultural expressions of this transition came in 2020, when the Hagia Sophia was consecrated once again as a mosque. Mustafa Kemal had converted the building into a museum as part of his push to secularize and westernize Turkey, but Erdogan wished to see it become a mosque again. Erdogan's decision might be seen as symbolic of his aspiration to leadership not just for Turkey, but as the leader of all Sunni Muslims, a position the Ottoman sultans traditionally claimed for themselves. As early as 2016, Turkish state media began releasing maps that showed the country's borders expanding into northern Syria and Iraq, stretching from the Mediterranean to the border with Iran. Part of Armenia was also included within these borders. Around the same time, Erdogan criticized the 1923 Treaty of Lausanne, which established Turkey's modern, post-Ottoman borders. These actions and Erdogan's foreign policy have led some geopolitical experts to believe that he, like Putin, Xi and other leaders such as India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, considers Turkey as a civilization state. In this view of the world order, values such as democracy, the rule of law, and the right of each state to sovereignty and territorial integrity are cast as Western ideas, with no claim to universal legitimacy. Shared attributes like language, ethnicity, and cultural traditions matter more in this view of the world. The state has the obligation to protect these things and all of the people tied to them. The historical status of many of these areas as being in the Ottoman Empire, including as far away as Libya, likely informs part of Erdogan's worldview. Turkey was long one of the great powers of Europe and the Middle East. At its height in the 16th century, the Ottoman Empire stretched from the Persian Gulf in the south to the Danube and Crimea in the north. However, it entered a period of decline and was called the sick man of Europe in the 19th century, before collapsing in the aftermath of World War I. Turkey's current deployments are far from the dominion it enjoyed during the Ottoman Empire, but its military build-up and reach is now the greatest it's seen since the old empire collapsed, with no plans of stopping soon. Western influence in the Middle East and Africa is declining, and China is experiencing growing internal problems that have decreased its investments too. Turkey, with its still growing population, is eager to fill this void. But will it? Will Erdogan succeed in creating a neo-Ottoman state of affairs in the region? What tension will his ambitions create within NATO in the years to come? Don't forget to let us know what you think in the comments. Also, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more military analysis from military experts. Now go and check out how Turkey has built the world's biggest army of killer drones, or click this other video instead.